Hi there. This is Jim the Keys bartender coming to you from Key Largo, and it is episode 161. And today I'm doing it solo. Jenna and friends, they have her two set of twins are moving up north, and we wish them well. But I have this habit. I got to release an episode on a Tuesday, and I thought this would be excellent time. Episode 161 recap of this time, and if you are a fan, please keep on staying with us, listening, and hope for us to overcome our battles with sound, physics, technology, content, all those things. And originally, I'm Jim the Keys bartender. If you need a introduction, and I came up with this idea, thinking that it might be a podcast where we come from the perspective of a bar in the subtropics in the United States, hence Keys bartender. We're starting to take on topics that are similar to bar, service industry, but related, but something that most people can relate to. And I hope that we do provide that content. And I'm just going to go and do a rehash of it. When I originally started out, I started with a host of mine, Connor. He was great in the beginning. He's a wonderful guy. It's just, you have certain chemistries you need to maintain when you're on the air. And if someone, and that's primarily me, is trying to be off the cuff, you don't want to offend someone you're with. And so, sometimes you have to make sure you have the right kind of mix on there. And Connor has a great voice, and he has brilliant observations, a wealth of knowledge, but it wasn't necessarily a good fit when you call a spade there. But we started our episodes first from the patio of his house, and then we moved it on to the Catch restaurant we were doing in the lounge. And the first, as I look back at the episodes, one of the pilot episodes, blue cheese olives, exclamation point. And that was more of a bitch session about people coming in. And I think I started out bitching about people. I don't think was my original intent, just to be talking shit about people that came in. And I do apologize if I did do that. And it happens sometimes. But I wanted to make more observational comedy, not necessarily putting the ridicule and ridiculous. So we have like tipping, not a city in China, blue cheese olives, bitching about people that want a day off on the holidays and they're working in the service industry. That was kind of mean spirited, and but we started out pretty explicit right away. We wanted to be able to say fuck, shit, dick, balls, all that stuff, and not worry about it, because it is for adults, and much like a bar setting and the type of bar we're in. We're not necessarily a martini bar, but we could be in a martini bar. I would change probably the way I speak there versus a bar. And we started doing this in the lounge of the Catch restaurant. And every so often you'd have people come in with their kids, and they sit at a table in the lounge area, and we'd be talking about sex, date rape, and all that stuff. And there you see a 8-year-old kid sitting over there sucking down a Shirley Temple. And then we really felt it. That we were probably overstepping bounds. And I think I continued it for we're doing it for over a year. And it's still, some of the language I was embarrassed about, not necessarily that I said it, but that I said it in the presence of people that maybe shouldn't have heard that. So I kept on looking for different venues, more adult venues. And so that was April. That was almost 2 years ago. And it's now, today is March 26th or 25th. I'm not exactly sure, but it's my one day off, Tuesday, one of the days off that I have no obligations other than familial obligations. So that's why I try to do it on Tuesdays. And we are coming up on, there are some changes coming up, not necessarily in format, but we are looking to cement a deal for representation and production and all the good stuff. So the Keys Bartender will move on to its next, I don't even know, evolutionary process that will be hopefully better content, better, we can concentrate on formatting, guests, and not be concerned about as much as trying to get the word out there, because we'll have someone doing that for us. So I'm looking back on some of the past episodes. When I first started doing this, I still have very little ability to come down with sound. And right now I'm using it's called a Meteor mic, a Samsung Meteor mic. It's a powered mic, and I don't have to hold it up. I can just do whatever I want. I'm in my family area. There's no one home, relatively quiet here, and so I'm able to use this. In a crowded area, I might use, it's called a dynamic mic, and that mic picks up pretty much all the sound within 6-8 inches of where it is, and loud sounds for further away. But you could be in a crowded area with a dynamic mic, and that's you won't pick up all the ambient sounds around you, which I kind of like the idea of having the ambient noise of a crowd behind me at a bar. But we'll get back to that later. And in the beginning, we had time. I'm going to go through maybe the first 20. What does it take to get a drink? This is how people. That was a problem episode, because I think I kept on losing my signal. If I didn't have, I use this online application for producing the podcast, and it has its own virtual soundboard, mixer, and things like that. But I also use a mixing board that goes into a computer, and I am woefully trained for that. It's usually been hit or miss, trial and error, and I'm finally I think I'm 80% of the chance, 80% of the way there, and so it was a struggle in the beginning. It was easy to write the topics, whether they're good, bad, or horrible. That's actually good and bad and horrible, the same thing, I guess. But whether that's the case, it was easy to come up with the things to talk about, and difficult to be sure that the sound would come out so it would be enough to tolerate. And then, once we don't have to worry about sound and production and show notes, hopefully we'll be able to concentrate more on content, guest, venue, and things like that. And maybe, the star will shine. But once again, we go back. We started in April of 2017. The first episodes, I deemed they were just horrible. They're just, I made them private. So you'll see, even though it says 161, it's actually probably 156 or 155, but there are other episodes. And some of the episodes are broken up in multiple pieces, because once again, I have a virtual soundboard, and a virtual soundboard, when I lost Wi-Fi signal, it would go down. And that's why I should have just, even with virtual soundboard, even if I'm just recording, which I like to do live. So my idea of doing it live is that you can't go back and delete something if something was missaid. I always hope that we'd say exactly what we mean and not hold back. There are complaints that people say. I've heard that they have a very, very progressive tilt to the podcast, but that's because I'm the host. And if you'd like to espouse other views, then you know what? It's a free world. You can go and create your own podcast. So the first episodes, I told you about the other ones. Let's see, what's it? Take a drink. A real nitwit walks into a bar. That was a shitty title. But right after that, I went, great story. Went on a cruise, and I started contacting the cruise line that I was doing a podcast, and I was doing a podcast, and I was going to do more of the podcasting from the cruise. And we were on the Carnival Splendor, and it was a beautiful cruise, and they were very accommodating to us. I mean, I was only about 12 episodes into my podcast, and they gave us some complimentary items, which I thought it was really nice. Not, I'm not, I wasn't I still am not a celebrity, but it was in the beginning, and they gave me access to their staff. I was able to get what do they call them? The events coordinator, the cruise director, and things like that. And I did a couple small cruise casts, and we did from when we went away, when we went off the ship, and I had a really great interview when I was on the ship with the cruise director. And we had it in their club area, and the club was empty. And I had, it's where their comedians and stand-up and all their singers and all whatever stuff do their shows. So we're just at a small table in the back of this club, and it's just us. And we did this great, the guy and I are riffing back and forth. I forget his name. And I had the free Wi-Fi they provided and things like that. And I had an imperfect understanding of the software. And like I've done once after, and before, I deleted an episode I didn't want to delete, and that was the episode with the cruise director, and that was the denouement, the high point of the cruise. And I was pissed off for 3 weeks. And I blamed everyone. I should have been pointing the mirror because I did it was my fault. So that was in August when I came back, and then I did a show about weight gain from that. I'm trying to working out my problem. And at that time, we had a young lady from Poland, and she came to visit us, and she stayed with us for a month. Very sweet. Karolinka is her name. And she helped out with Sky, my daughter, and she's a medical student. And we had a great time, and we did an episode. I think we did it in Polish. We did a small, short episode in Polish, and I instructed her in English. She knew English, but we did I let them do the podcasting in Polish, and I was interviewing them to say things and tell them how creepy I was, and I thought it was self-deprecating. I thought that was amusing. It probably was stupid as shit, but the girls were charming. Charming. I'd say charming. That's a toilet paper. But I went on my kick with foreign visitors. And then I think I had some French friends come to visit me, and some people from Wales. And it was, we had them come in there, and then we started talking about crazy conspiracy theories. That was episode 14. And then we started talking about some of the interesting people. Now, this is August 30th, 2017. And if you're not familiar, August 30th, 2017, we had just had a couple of hurricanes in the Atlantic Basin. And we did an episode of it about creepy people in bars. But we also are keeping, the same time, we're just watching these hurricanes develop, off the west coast of Africa. And they're huge. They're huge. And then the beginning of September calls around, 2017. And that was a seminal moment for the show. It's episodes of 16 through, 21, 22. We did Hurricane Irma episodes, the prep stories, talking about them coming in, what we're going to do, the evacuation. I did a short one as we're evacuating, and when we were pulled off the side of the road. And we were just keeping track of it. We were, taking our family and talking about the preparations we did. And then when we got up to the place we evacuated from, because it was coming dead on at the point we evacuated, it was Thursday. We were about, it was Wednesday or Thursday. It was zeroed in right on Key Largo. It ended up hitting to the west of us, in the ground zero was Big Pine Key, but or Deer Key, but we did see a lot of devastation up here, and it just got greater as we went down. But I wasn't willing to risk it with a wife and a daughter and a little puppy. You know, if I was by myself, I think I would do it. It's not because I'm a brave guy, because I would have been fucking stupid enough to stay behind and think that, you know what, I'm not going to leave. I'll just stay behind and drink with everyone that would stay. And I'm not calling the people that stay behind stupid. It's just some people are more attached to their things and don't, you know. And as it turned out, which I get to, we did evacuate the Lakeland, and I had contact with 3 people that stayed in the Keys. And once or twice, it was, I had several times spoke to, when the Keys first got struck, to Chris Yulin, David Kay, and my Bill Wissinger, who was a longtime co-host of the Keys Bartender, and I'm sure we'll have him on again. But during Irma, I'm up in Lakeland with my family at the nice hotel, and they were kind enough to, well, most of the hotels would have it. It's almost like martial law when a hurricane happens, and they allow you to bring your pets and all these supplies with you. You know, when you leave, you find out what's really important in your life. You just take your most important papers, your keepsakes, maybe some jewelry that you have, and things you can't afford to lose, because, you know, you never know what's going to happen, and it could be under like how many feet of water. And we went up there, and while Irma was hitting the Keys, we're up in the Lakeland, and what happened, it kind of jinxed around, went through the Keys, did a lot of damage to further south of where I am, and then looped around Florida and went into Lakeland, Florida, and it kind of followed us where we went. And the thing about hurricanes, like tornadoes, you don't know where they're going to go, but we just stayed in a strong enough structure in a big enough city on the mainland, high enough land that we were going to be underwater at least, and we were about 80 feet up in the air, and it turned out pretty good for us. The worst damage was it just moved the hotel enough to bust some pipes in it, and one of the on the 9th floor, and I think the 8th floor was flooding the next day. But other than that, there was Lakeland weathered it pretty good. So we did a couple of the episodes. I think even I brought in my wife Abby and Yolanda to do the Polish and English one. We also did, I had some friends who are from France that now live in Florida, and we did a French report for about 10 minutes. And on the 10th, we did right at the tail end, and then we did the recovery episodes following. The recovery episodes, we were just talking about all the damage was done, trying to raise money and awareness that within weeks the Keys were reopened, even though it looks devastated here. I mean, when I came back from the Keys, it was as if a giant, a Goliath came with a hedge trimmer and trimmed everything 15 feet, every tree 15 feet or higher. It's just an even cut right across, and all the leaves are gone. And because we're semi-tropics, there's never a time down here when all the leaves are gone, but almost all the leaves except for palm fronds. Coconut trees are, I guess, evolutionarily adapted to keep a hold of their palms if they're staying upright. But every other tree was bare, and I never saw it down here. This is closest as you'd ever experience fall, winter to look like down here. And it was all the greenery was stripped. But if you come down here now, and we're so that was 2017. It's 2019, and we kept talk about there was one of the big things was there was rumors of vastly underreporting fatalities in Irma. And there was always these rumors that there was hundreds, if not hundreds, thousands of people that died but were unreported because there were undocumented people or people off the grid or people that lived, we call them liveaboards. They just live on a boat, passable boat. Let's say something that still floats. Obviously, got to float, but it may not have a mast or anything like that. And they just live there, and they take their rowboats inland to get supplies and go back out. And they live their whole life. It's called living on the hook, and they don't have to pay anything other than if they're paying rent to the person on the boat, or they're squatters on a boat. And some of the times, getting later, I want to find out whether these are hazardous to navigation, but that's neither here nor there right now. I'm going through the review. So then we started talking about, we got into more the meat of it. We started talking to issues of anger management, how we handle our tempers. We did a couple of pit stop parties. We went back to the old tried and true with people asking for things, some strange things. How people have it could be just a fear of pickles. I remember we did a whole show. People say, I don't want a pickle. I don't want a pickle near my plate. I don't want to taste any pickle juice. I don't want anything. And I said, wow, I thought at this time maybe something happened to the guy with a pickle. He may have been abused with it. And then, every so often I talked about some of the weird animals we have down here because, you could go to one of these, our local supermarkets called Publix. And one time I get out of my car and there's just 8 chickens standing there on a group of shopping carts. And it looks like an arrangement that someone would make so they could, do a painting. But there were just, a couple chickens, two roosters just hanging, looking different directions, just standing there. And I know there's other places, but they're mainly like third world places or more, let's say it's kind of like look like a rural picture of the United States in the 1930s. If you go to this small town and there's loose chickens running around and stuff like that. So that was crazy. And then we had the Me Too movement because Matt Lauer, we were really fucking surprised at that. And then during these episodes, we're already, I think we made the transition. It was Bill Wissinger and Luke Glenn were on the show, and they were with me for over 100 episodes. And Bill really did a bang-up job on the sound. And we did episodes, I may call them, because they look just like the guys from ZZ Top. They were, long-ass beards. They're both musicians. And, you talk to them. After a while, it took me a while. I understood what they were talking about. Sometimes they call their own phrasing about long pig and things like that. Whatever terminology they use that I wasn't familiar with as a city boy. And then we got into the ideas of big concept ideas is cell phone cameras, how no one lives their life private anymore. And then we did our Christmas episodes, and we got Bill and I going over stories and stuff like that. We had a bar exorcist story. It was when we had some crazy people coming to a bar and how I chased her out. The jury duty episode, we went to infomercials. We tried to one episode we tried to give all these where people have these opinions on what Luke looks like. I think he looks like a wizard. He looks a little like Gandalf. Some people think he looks like someone from ZZ Top or Duck Dynasty. We started talking about what's in your spam folder instead of what's in your wallet, and in these guys, they wouldn't admit that Luke and Bill never admitted that there would be lots of porn. But granted, if you're a man, there's in your junk files and all that stuff in your history, there's a lot of porn. And now one of the great ones is one drunk guy comes in and he just looks up and gives me a starfish sandwich. And I'm like, oh fuck, is that a thing down here? A starfish sandwich? I've never heard of it. It was already, so it's 2018. I came down over, 11 years, almost 11 years, and I never heard of a starfish sandwich. So I asked around, I said to my coworker, I said, this drunk guy came in and asked for a starfish sandwich. And she goes, we got a starfish. And I put I think I took a little, it's like a a plaster starfish and put it on a roll. And I didn't give it to the guy because he was probably drunk enough to do it. And then we started talking about Luke losing his keys and stuff. Oh, we talked about the backpack guy. The backpack guy, he was a great guy. The backpack guy was someone that came in, and he was just a short, fat guy. He came over, talked to two young ladies, and he started telling a joke, and it was about the punchline was boobies. But the guy couldn't even get through the whole joke, and he just goes at the end. He goes, "I love titties." That was a great one. Then we went over once again with people that were obsessive on their drinks, how they micromanage their drinks. They want 3 onions, 2 olives, 1 lime twist. That's actually title of the show. And you come up, when you come and micromanage your drinks and stuff like that, you better be like young Jennifer Aniston hot, or Charlize Theron, because no one's going to think that's really cute after a while. They just find it fucking annoying. And then we try to do, I think, was it International Women's Day? But it was, yes, last year, International Women's Day. And I did it a little early and we missed it. But right at the end, we started talking how, misogynistic the service industry is, and how, a lot of guys of our generation, and Bill and Luke, and they were telling stories of how, the women they're with and their siblings and their parents, and how they got along with them. And, we were trying to be generally respectful of women. And then right at the end of the show, I'm ready to sign off, and I turn it over to Luke, and Luke goes into this song, a song he wrote. I think he wrote it, and it's called "I Love Pussy." And he goes, "Pussy, pussy, pussy," and blah, 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 blah. Then it's right at the end of the International Women's Day show. Now, listen, I'm not culturally, obviously, you heard me say pussy before, and dick and all this stuff, and talk about sex and dildos and all that stuff. But I didn't want to end the International Women's Day show that way. It was funny. It was funny. I just said, "Bill, stop." I didn't cut off Luke. I let him finish, and then I waited, and I apologized, and we did that. So then we get on that. That was our first 50 episodes, and that was a big milestone, because then we started doing 2 shows a week, and one show Luke gets his beard on fire. We lost Luke one time. I had some French friends come in. We had the white paper. I don't even know what that means. That's probably like the White Album, the Beatles, but obviously I'm not comparing myself to the Beatles. It's show business, not show friends. That's right, according because all the hosts I had. What's it? The We Don't Need No Stinking Badges, the Skunk Ape, the Flat Earth. We started talking about conspiracy theories, and oh my God, that was a great episode 58. And then we started doing Blackwater Siren in episode 59, and started talking, and then we went and talked about mentally challenged. Oh, some guy comes up to us at the, he's drunk. And this is where I don't really have a problem with drunk people coming up and talk to me, because obviously I'm a bartender, and I've been on the giving and the receiving end in the past. So I try not to be prejudged or ridicule people like that. But this guy was great. He came up to me at the end, and he said, I asked him where we were, and I told him he didn't know exactly where he was and what kind of food they served. But he didn't even know what city he was in. So that guy was having a really good time. Then we had Strangers in a Strange Land. That was visitors from out there. I had episode 70 had a psych test. Psycho test, actually, it should be called, but the psych test, and that's with Chris, the musician Chris Lute, a friend of mine, and Chris Lute. We went through the psycho. There's a book called the Psycho Test, and it's supposedly the first psychological test that was given to give a definitive definition to people that might be psychotic, whether it's true or not. But that was his. And then I had a friend, Alan, Tony Allen. He's a Keys funeral director, talking about some of his stuff came on episode. Wow, and then we're rolling through to 76. We have the secret meeting. That secret meeting, once again, Luke probably didn't show up for a show and didn't say anything. So then we did some first dates, talking about how you handle first dates, and that was in June and 2018. And June 2, I think we were talking about butt plugs, and Luke was suggesting that he might be up for trying one out because later on through so many episodes we talk about how freaking hot it gets down here, about our lobster mini season, and then we're this in our 90s, and we attempted to do, and I still want to do this, a live podcast from the boat ramp of the Caribbean Club, the world famous Caribbean Club in Key Largo. And that's a bar. It only takes cash. If they're going to be drinking in Key Largo, that's the place for drinking, because you're not going to be eating there because they don't serve food. And it has the main boat ramp in town where people use. And when you have liquor and boats being put in water, it is just a recipe for hilarity to ensue. You'll have cars trucks being put in there, boats falling off. Hopefully no one getting hurt. But that didn't, it wasn't a lot of, it was supposed to be a busy day, but it didn't happen. Then we're rolling close now. We got Disney Exorcism, The Balls, closing time, and then episode 100, The Face Licker. The Face Licker was a seminal moment. It's our 100th episode, and supposedly all you hear, even though we could have been our 94th, considering we got rid of the other ones. I started thinking back when we got to 100. I said, are we funny? Are we doing the right thing? Should we keep on doing it? But obviously this is episode 161. So what was the answer to that one? I think it was yes. And then the face licker, that was a great story. That was a woman who was drinking tequila. It was her birthday. And at the end, she was coming over, and she was a sloppy drunk. And she came over and going, come on, come over here, Jim, give me a kiss. And I'm like pretending to do something behind the bar. I'm writing things down, washing glasses. And I go, oh, I'm sorry, I'm very busy. I go, take him. I pointed to a friend of mine who happened to be a high school teacher who's the shop teacher at the local high school. And she goes over and gives him a kiss on the face. And then she takes her tongue out and licks his whole face. And it was hilarious. And you just have to see it when some unexpectedly get your face licked by someone at the bar and you didn't even expect it. So, and then we had some of our better episodes, zombie porn. Then we went through all the fetishes up there, weird fetishes. That was a good episode. And then we have Camelli Posilimus, and that's camel toe. That's the Latin word for camel toe. We started talking about camel toe, moose knuckle, and all those things. When you have your pants too tight. For guys, it's when your balls and your dick are like bunched up. Or women, it's when you can do a little, when your vagina is, just outlined right there when you have that. I think they even have, we talked about, they even have prosthesis to put in there. So some people want to have it. I don't find it, camel toe is not something that I find very attractive, and then we had Don't. We have medication time. Should I stay or should I go? Normalizing the perverse. We started talking about, we talking a lot of pervy things. And right around this time, we were in discussions, and I think it was butt plug time, with this adult store, porn store in Key Largo. It's called the Lover's Boutique. And I got in contact with the owners, and we were in contact on Facebook Messenger, and we went back and forth, and I expressed interest in doing a podcast, and I wanted to do it live from in there. And I had an idea, and the idea was we'll just do it surrounded, talk about the things in there, be really clinical. I think it'd be kind of funny because we always talked about that shit anyway at that time. And then if someone wanted to come over, if they happen to make a purchase, I'd do a little bit, maybe, what's in your bag. You could have a little pocket pussy. You could have dirty DVDs and things like that. That was I thought it would have been a great concept, and it would have really moved the show along quickly. But in later episodes, Luke started talking about using a vibrating butt plug. And he suggested that he would just use it as just a trial period. Use the butt plug, and then when he's done, you can just, it wouldn't be, you could put it right back on the shelf. And I explained to Luke, I said, a butt plug or a dildo is something you do not want to put back on the shelf if it's been used. Now, I'm not saying that places don't do that. I just don't think the concept is that. And I think what happened maybe is they may have heard that and they thought, these guys cannot go into this place because they're going to be ripping apart our things. And maybe the guy that looks like Gandalf may shove a butt plug up there in his butt, and and this other guy Jim will record it. And I said, well, I would have, if Luke did do that, I would be very pissed at him. But I could tell you, listeners, 100%, if Luke stuck a vibrating butt plug up himself, I would have mic'd him for all it was worth, and that would have been gold. And I told Luke, I said, Luke, maybe you shouldn't drink so much before you do the podcast, because we did have that episode come. Luke would come in. It'd be 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, the podcast is 5. It was okay. And he started drinking at 1. I go, oh, man, he's funny. But, I mean, it's hard. If you notice, listen to some of the episodes, you probably hear the ones that Luke drank a little more. And I'm sure every so often you'll notice an episode or two where I may have drank a little too much. Today, I'm not drinking at all. Not that I won't drink at all today. It's just too early in the day for me to drink. And then, this was a great one. I had found a picture of a inflatable, it looked like underpants. They were inflatable, but what they were actually for was, it's from the 60s or 70s, and it was supposedly sold in magazines and was supposed to help you lose weight. And I put in a sexy future, and it showed these people in these inflatable underpants, and there was nothing sexy about it, and it almost got banned. It got banned from either iHeartRadio or something like that, and I had to go back and make a appeal. And I said, no, if you look at it, the thing, none of the items that we talked about, even though the show was explicit, the picture wasn't explicit, so they let me go off. Okay, then I was in a loss for what I can do to take the show in a new direction. Then I started interviewing people. I still have this. We're going to do more of this but I started interviewing people for the show, and I did Melissa Devine and Emily Pearson, and the nice girls and stuff like that, having young girls, you know what I mean? And we did it on Skype, and then I realized, oh my God, I got to break the thing. I was trying to get some dude I can interview, so it didn't look like I was a horny old bastard just interviewing these young, hot girls. But I thought maybe, you know what, until I get the sound perfected better, I think it came out, they did come out pretty good, but it's hard to get really kind of ridiculous with someone who's about 30 years younger than you. And it's not one of the things I do well. So then we had a reunion, and then, we had a listener from Iran who kept, I kept on seeing some episodes being listened to in Iran, and we started giving them a shout out during the show for the next 10 shows. And then we called it, all of a sudden, no more listener in Iran. And we speculated that Sharia law came in there and just said, they took his head. You know what I mean? One of those things. I tried that. That's my Muslim taunt. And then I had my buddy Pat Hogan, great guy. We talked about, we did an episode about fraternity, which has a lot to do with drinking. And then we have cyber dating. Dating online. That was a good one. Sweatsuit. Then episode 116, Halloween build-up episodes. And that was, we were doing 2 a week, so we're blowing through this thing. We got episode 119, Beehole Pleasures. I think we're still talking about the thing, even though we got shot down. We had I did a longer lead up to Halloween than I did for Christmas. And then we started going back into other topics. Take our fucking picture. Oh, Canada. I guess I was going off on Canadians. And then what was this episode 2 thing? I didn't say that. Things I didn't say. My stance against cancer. We go through, and then we shitty sidewalks. That was the Christmas one. Shitty sidewalks. And then we had a little break for about a week and a half. And we started blowing through these in January again. And Moby Douche we had. But right in, I think, the last episode with Luke and Bill was in February. And what happened was it was right at the end of February and January. And if it sounded like, and I'd have to end the show, we're at 160 episode, it's 161. I appreciated the commitment that Bill and Luke had to the show and showing up most times. And I know they have other things, their music is primary importance. But for me, the podcast was as an art form or semi-art form or whatever you want to call it, was primary importance to me. And I needed to have someone that was committed to that. And I couldn't ask them to do it if I couldn't compensate them. And it was hard to be able to tell them, like, hey, listen, we're trying to make this about comedy, not about a bitch session and stuff like that. And it's really hard to tell people what to do when they're not being paid to do it. But I was saying, this is the goal. This is the idea I have. If you want to start your own goal, I can show you. You can use my virtual platform, and we'll set up a Luke Glenn show or a Bill Witzinger show, and you can talk about roadkill, and you can talk about moonshine, and you can talk about, how your amp works, and about the conversations you have with people, about people that the audience members don't know. So they would start having conversations about something. And Sissy said this and Sissy said that. And like, who the fuck is Sissy? Put it some context. They have to give a little context. They don't realize that you don't know everyone they know, and you don't pick up on those conversations. And I try to get on Mark, and we try to talk about things, and it just wouldn't coalesce. So that's when Jenna came along. And Jenna's a local finance manager at a recreational vehicle place. And we do, and we changed it from just being almost always on venue driven, a podcast, to content driven. And we just sit there and we talk and riff off that. And then sometimes you may see me driving it and pushing it into other subjects, but that's just what happens in a bar sometimes. But with a bar, it's people walk in and they do it and they talk about it, and they prompt you with something that's weird, and you'll just steamroll into it. So we'll be drinking and doing the show and giving updates on Key's events, Key's history. Recently, we had a great spate of weird stories. We had a young man named Amato Gare, we called a hijacker, or Wankodoodle Dandy. He was arrested one night walking to the Lovers Boutique, the very Lovers Boutique that canceled our show there. While he was there, a woman noticed, while he was walking to it, which he was a little ways off, a woman noticed he was exposing himself and he looked like he might be masturbating. And he was. And the police stopped him, and they found some drug paraphernalia on him, and they said he was exposing himself. And he did explain he was going to the adult store, but he had become impatient, and he had started to take care of himself on the way there. And Amato Gare, we salute you, and that's some of the stories we'd like to bring you. But that's just, we're not just driven by stories, we're driven by ideas. Not necessarily high-minded ideas, but the ideas nonetheless. And I had friends. I had my friend Joel he's a a retired psychologist from the Mid-Atlantic region who lives part of the year in Barcelona, Spain with his lovely wife. We had him on, and his friend Jack and Joel. Yep, and we did a couple episodes with them. I think there's Papa Joe is a new one, and we're hoping to do in the future probably do some more venue-driven shows where we're going to different places, do the show, introduce people, talk about the place, so you can come and get a feel for the Keys. But that's essentially what I do. I want to be Keys bartender. We're going to introduce you to Keys, talk a little about the bar stuff, do anything funny, observational we can do, and then maybe we can do some chatting and things like that. But right now we are in. The sound will be getting better. The show notes will be getting better, and we will be getting. Hopefully, we'll be getting some sort of uptick in exposure, and that will help us do it. And I'll probably be able to, for good or bad, do more shows during the week. So instead of doing 2 shows a week, we're going to do 3. But I'd like to thank everyone that's listening. And remember, we need to, if you do have the opportunity to leave a review. The review raises, especially on iTunes. I'm not saying it's not very clear how it's very hard to find us on iTunes sometimes. And the more I want to show up in the, if it's deemed well enough, I want to show up in a thing where if you like this show, why don't you listen to this show? And we'd like to do that. And I hope you appreciate it. I'm sorry I went on for 46 minutes. I just figured we needed to do a review at this time. And I also wanted to release a show for Tuesday. And we might have two episodes this week. Who knows? But 2 more additional episodes. Thank you very much. And this is Jim, the Keys bartender. Have a drink on me. I'm gonna come up with some stupid fucking saying that you'll be able to. I'll probably stick to. But thank you for listening this week, and I'll talk to you soon.